going on, everybody? This is Chris Martinez from Dynamic Duo Training.
And this is Eric Martinez.
Alright, so we're back doing an educational video for you guys, okay? So this time what we're going to do is talk about the hierarchy of training, okay? We don't want to get too off topic with this and get too much into depth because we want to keep this video under 10 minutes and not compile too much information and do a brain overload thing with you guys, okay? So we're going to try to keep this within the context of just what we think is important within resistance training, okay? Not program design necessarily, but we might touch up into that. It might cross over a little bit, but we just want you guys to know we're trying to, be in the context of what we think is most important when it comes into, a resistance training program and staying consistent with it and, pretty much what is optimal for a training program, okay? I know the word optimal, it should be put in quotes because, there's no such thing as optimal, but we want to say optimal because, it opens up discussions. It opens up questions, and that further leads to finding out what is the best, practices within, training and everything like that. Okay. All right. So I'll let Eric actually dip into the first one, and hope you guys enjoy it.
All right, guys. So the first bullet points I'll be covering is safety, health, and goals. Okay. So those are, if you look at those are pretty broad, and I mean they're pretty self-explanatory, but they're very, very important, variables when it comes to the hierarchy of training. So with safety, I mean, this pretty much goes hand in hand with all aspects in life, okay? And to start off with, weight training is, it's dangerous, okay? It can be dangerous. So you have to imply safety, okay, when it comes to that. So what I mean by that is you see a lot of times people have a lot of ego, when they first start off. So they want to just push as much weight as they possibly can. They want to compare themselves to somebody that they see on, Instagram, social media. So, they sit there and try to lift too much weight, and, it's like they're compromising their health and they can risk injury. So, when it comes to safety, choose an optimal weight and, a beginning weight for yourself and slowly progress yourself, okay? Don't let your ego or anybody else tell you differently, okay? So, safety always comes first, and always choose an exercise that you feel safe with. Feel it out first, okay? And see if it feels good, if it causes any pain or injury, then, pull back on it, try something different. But safety is always key. And I can kind of tie that into health as well, okay? Because, are you going to sit there and run a training program if you're not healthy? No, that's probably not the most optimal thing to do, okay? Because then you're compensating your overall health. So always make sure you're healthy. Go get a physical, go to a chiropractor, make sure your spine's good. Just make sure everything's working the way it should be, okay? So, always take your health into consideration because overall health is number one, and we're always going to preach that with our clients as well for ourselves. And then last but not least, goals. Goals are huge, guys. You have to set some sort of goal, whether it's a small goal, medium, or a large goal, okay? But you want to set yourself a goal because that's going to keep you focused, and it's going to make you want to work that much harder. It's going to make you get up in the morning, look at the goal, whether you put it somewhere that's visible or not, or just have it stored in your head. But you're always going to want some sort of goal just to reach and, look back on and be like, look, I achieved this goal. Now it's time to move on to a bigger goal, okay? So always keep goals into mind.
Jeez, I lost my train of thought. This guy talks so much, all right? Just because he's a minute older, he thinks he can just talk over me. All right, so on a serious note, okay, adherence, consistency, and preferences, all right? So it's just exactly the same thing with nutrition, right? You can have, the best macro ratios, the quote-unquote best diet ever, okay? But if you're not adherent to it and you don't stick with it, you're not going to get results, right? It's not going to work. So same thing with training, okay? If you don't find a program where, you're going to want to work hard at and be consistent with, day in, day out, week in, week out, month by month, okay, you're not going to get results from it. You're not going to end up working hard at it, and it's not going to work in the end, okay? So we put adherence, consistency, and preferences as well, okay? Because personal preference is huge, okay? It's the same thing as diet too. I'll put that in there. With nutrition, you don't want to exclude foods, right? Because you're going to want those eventually, okay? And you're going to eventually want to have those, okay? So same thing with training, okay? You want to have, workouts, that you prefer, different styles of training that you prefer, so that it leads to adherence and consistency. And you work hard at it, you get fired up at it, and then you're going to reap the benefits and results out of it, okay? So we feel that adherence, consistency, and personal preference is huge when it comes to, training.
Yeah, no need to be a program hopper. All right, so the next bullet point that I'll touch up on is specificity. And I'll start off with the principle of specificity, which is the SAID principle, okay? And that's, specific adaptation to an imposed demand, okay? So what that really means is, let your body adapt to, what you're trying to do, and you got to kind of base this around as well. That what are you? What kind of training are you doing? Are you a bodybuilder? Are you a power lifter, figure, bikini athlete? Are you a athlete in general? Do you play a specific sport, that you need to focus on? So I think that really just goes into, hand in hand with the specificity and the SAID principle. You have to really figure out, what kind of demands that your body needs, what kind of demands does your training need, what kind of demands does your sport-specific demands need as well, okay?
Okay, so one thing that I forgot to mention too on adherence, consistency, and preferences is that, you got to keep in mind with schedules, okay? Everybody has different schedules, whether they're hectic or, not hectic, so you got to keep that in mind too, because if I was to go out there and program somebody 6 days a week of training and they only were able to, do 3 or 4 days a week of training, would that be smart? Would that really lead to them being adherent and consistent? Probably not, okay? So keep that in mind, all right? Okay, so periodization, all right? So basically, I'm not going to really go into what periodization is because we have a video on that, so make sure to view that, okay? But basically with periodization, it just means variation, versus no variation, okay? So we're always going to want some sort of variation with periodization, okay? And the literature is pretty much clear on this that, the more variation is better than no variation at all, okay? So when you're looking at the hierarchy of training with periodization, okay, you want to think of, pretty much just concepts, okay, within periodization. So you have, nonlinear periodization, linear periodization, you have block periodization, you have daily undulating periodization, you have RPE training, auto-regulation. I mean, there's a lot of concepts, right? So depending on your training age and your goals and everything like that, you want to make sure to have some sort of concept of, periodization that you want to follow, okay? So that just depends. If you're a novice or a beginner, you probably don't have to worry about periodization because you're going to get those newbie effects and you're not going to have to just worry about that, okay? But if you're intermediate, if you're dipping into advanced, you might want to start thinking about, periodization to keep ensuring growth and results overall, right? So you might want to look into one of those concepts in there. And that's just going to lead overall to, more adherence, consistency, and then preferences too. I mean, you want to pick a concept that you're going to prefer, so maybe that's like, you prefer a percentage-based program. Maybe somebody else prefers an RPE-based program. Maybe somebody doesn't prefer those type of programs, right? Because if you put someone on that and they don't prefer and they don't like it, it goes back to adherence and consistency, right? So they're not going to reap those results, right? Okay, so next up we have training variables, okay? So with training variables, once you have the periodization down, which concepts that you want to pick and everything like that, okay, you want to start thinking about training variables, okay? So the biggest training variables that you want to think about is obviously volume, intensity, and frequency, okay? So with periodization, basically, the variation versus no variation is manipulating those training variables, okay? If we had to put those in order, we would probably put, training volume first, and then we'd probably put probably frequency second, I would say, because, frequency is almost like a tool for training volume, okay? And then you'd probably want, to focus on intensity, okay? So just think about that with training variables, with, volume, intensity, and frequency, okay? Because you're going to want to pick a concept, within periodization that is going to manipulate those training variables, because you need to do that, to ensure growth over time. Make sure you don't get stale or burnt out. Because what a lot of people end up doing, is they'll train balls to the wall. So they'll train their intensity, at 90%, 100%, week in, week out. And what happens is they get either injured, they get burnt out, they get stale, or, mental and motivational arousal just, dips down, okay? So you got to keep that in mind to, periodize your intensity. And same with volume. I look at volume as kind of like calories, okay? You want to start on, as low as volume as possible and get away with, getting results that way. Same with calories. You want to diet on as high as calories as possible. And over time, you want to make modest and subtle changes in adding volume over time to keep ensuring growth, right? Same with calories. If you diet down on high calories, you want to make modest and subtle changes to keep dieting down, right? And not sit there and slash calories so much. So it's the same thing with that, okay? And frequency, a lot of that just depends on your training age, your experience, where you're at, what your goals are. How many days you need to actually, be more frequent with lifts, body parts, stuff like that. But that's a whole another discussion we can make a video on.
So the last 2 bullet points I'll talk about and just wrap this up with is recovery and rest. And pretty much, if you know what you're pretty much doing in the gym, you have to get, you're going to get your optimal growth through rest and recovery. That's just the way the body works. It needs to rest. It needs to recover. So what are you doing on a day-to-day basis to recover? So that can go back to volume and frequency. About how much volume you're doing within your training. How much frequency are you doing, and how much rest do you need to program around that. So you have to take into consideration that you have to take some days off from the gym and let your body rest. Okay, whether that's 1 to 3 days, it just really depends on your overall goal, what level you're at, novice, intermediate, or advanced. But you have to let your body rest, and you let your central nervous system recover, your muscles, everything. Okay, so then
your mind
too, yeah, as well. And then as far as rest and recovery too, what are you doing outside of the gym as far as self-myofascial release techniques? Are you going to a chiropractor getting body work done? Are you icing? Are you heating? Are you stretching? All that stuff. Are you keeping up on your mobility to keep your range of motion adequate? Everything. You got to keep your muscle, your tissues, your joints, everything healthy. If you're in this for the long run, you have to be smart, and you have to really take recovery and rest into consideration. Okay.
And also too with recovery is nutrition. What are you doing outside of that?
Absolutely.
How's your nutrition? You want a proper nutrition program. You want to get adequate sleep, and you want to probably manage stress levels as best as possible.
Exactly.
So.
Yep, those are all huge, guys. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for the hierarchy of training. But before we end this, we want to throw out there and take a moment to just tell you guys that we have some new training protocols that were made for us that are just world class. They're awesome. They're very user friendly, and it's like a roadmap, okay, to success. So we also have that. We implement those with our coaching program. We have 3-month training programs with our coaching, and then we have another option that's called training on the go, where we can design a 12-block training protocol to where you can just follow it on your own, and we guide you through it the first time. But then after that, you just follow it, and then you just check in with us after you're done. So take that into consideration, and we hope you guys enjoyed this hierarchy of training video, and yeah, thank you for tuning in.
All right, guys, thanks a lot, and make sure to visit us on our social media channels, Instagram, where this guy likes to take a lot of selfies, Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you guys have some time. All right, appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.